Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going deep into Al Pacino's memoir, Sonny Boy.
Mm.
And we're not just going to, trace his career highlights, but try to understand like what fueled those really electric performances of his.
I think one of the things that really struck me about this book is that it's not just him celebrating his achievements. It's really him grappling with his demons. And honestly, that makes the choices he made in his art that much more fascinating.
Yeah, for sure. Let's rewind all the way back to Pacino's childhood in the South Bronx.
Yeah.
Now, we all know that he didn't have this, glamorous, privileged upbringing, but how much did that actually shape him as an actor?
I think his environment was more than just a setting. It was like a crucible. Imagine Pacino as a kid, seeing his mother struggling with her mental health, not through, some sort of clinical lens, but just through the raw emotional understanding of a child. I mean, that must have shaped his empathy, his ability to tap into those really raw feelings that really just grabbed audiences.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's like the South Bronx itself was a masterclass in human behavior way before any acting school. But Sonny Boy also shows us that acting wasn't his instant, escape route, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. This wasn't one of those stories where a talented kid stumbles onto a stage and becomes an overnight sensation. Pacino was out there, hustling, working odd jobs, facing rejection constantly, all while clinging to this dream of being an artist. And I think that grit, that resilience, says a lot about how deep his commitment to acting really was.
It makes you think, though, was it just like pure ambition driving him, or was there something deeper there? Was there something he needed to express that he couldn't any other way? But then things changed for him. He met Lee Strasberg and the Actors Studio. For anyone who might not be familiar with method acting, how would you like sum it up? What's the essence of it?
So basically, instead of just playing the role, you live it. Strasberg's method acting was all about encouraging actors to dig deep into their own emotions, their own experiences, and use that to fuel their performance. It's all about blurring the lines between the character and the person playing them, to create this almost unsettlingly authentic performance.
So for Pacino, do you think this method acting was a natural fit, or was he taking it like further than other actors were?
Well, Pacino definitely took this to an almost obsessive level. There are stories of him isolating himself for days on end, trying to, really inhabit the loneliness, the rage, all the complex emotions of his characters.
Hmm.
Now, on the one hand, that definitely resulted in some unforgettable performances, but it makes you wonder about the toll that kind of intense immersion took on him personally.
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
It does make you wonder. Was this method acting ultimately a good thing or a bad thing for him? We can't talk about Pacino without talking about his iconic roles, and I have to bring up The Godfather. It's hard to believe he almost didn't get the part of Michael Corleone.
It really makes you think about how much of history, comes down to those near misses. Like, imagine The Godfather with a different Michael. Would it have had the same impact? It's kind of crazy to think about. But thankfully, Coppola saw something in Pacino that the studio execs didn't. What do you think it was about that role that Pacino fought so hard for? Do you think he knew it was his ticket to, superstardom?
It's tough to say for sure, but what's clear from Sonny Boy is that even back then, Pacino wasn't just chasing fame. He was really drawn to these complicated characters, characters with a lot of depth. Of course, fame definitely has its dark side, and the memoir doesn't shy away from that. Pacino talks about his struggles with relationships, his battles with alcohol, the whole dark side of celebrity, really.
Yeah, and that's where it gets really insightful, I think. Because, here's this guy who embodies power, intensity, all that on screen, and yet off screen, he's grappling with these very human vulnerabilities. It suggests that his acting wasn't about, escaping from reality, but maybe more about confronting it head on, even if it meant digging up his own demons in the process.
It's a good reminder that even behind those legendary performances, there's a real person,
Yeah.
someone who's trying to figure out life just like the rest of us.
And that makes his later reflections on acting that much more interesting. He talks about how acting was his lifeline, his anchor. Do you think that means it was more than just a job for him?
It definitely seems like it was a way for him to process his experiences, to make sense of the world. But let's maybe dig into that a bit more. So we've talked about Pacino's, pretty tough upbringing, his dedication to his craft, and even the potential downsides of that really intense acting style he had. But later in Sonny Boy, he really gets into this idea of acting as his lifeline. What do you think he means by that?
I think it gets to something really deep about art. It's like, for some people, art isn't just a way to express themselves, it's how they survive. It's how they deal with their emotions, make sense of the world, find something bigger than themselves to connect with.
And it's interesting, he doesn't try to make the whole acting thing sound glamorous, you know?
Mm.
He talks about compromises, that tension between staying true to your art
Yeah.
and the demands of Hollywood, the whole business side of things.
Right, and that's where you can see how his thinking has changed over time. Like the younger Pacino, the one who was so hungry to be recognized, he probably would have taken any role he could get. But the Pacino writing this book, he's grappling with legacy. He wants roles that really speak to him, even if they don't mean like huge box office numbers.
It's like he's not trying to prove anything anymore. He's more interested in exploring what it means to be human, using his acting to tell stories that matter, even if they're kind of uncomfortable or difficult to watch.
And all that introspection really adds another layer to his performances. When you watch his later films, knowing all the stuff he's been through, the battles he's fought, there's a depth there, a vulnerability that wasn't always so obvious, in his earlier work.
Totally. It's like you're seeing everything come together his whole life, the personal stuff and the professional, it all gets poured into his acting. What do you think sets Pacino apart from other actors who've become, legends?
Well, there's this rawness to his performances, this intensity that's hard to describe. It's like he's tapping into something really primal, those emotions that most people keep hidden away. He's not afraid to show them. He's not afraid to play characters who are unlikable, who have flaws, who can be dark. But even then, there's always this little bit of humanity, this vulnerability that makes you connect with them.
And that rawness, I think it comes from his willingness to completely lose himself in a role, to become the character, even if it means blurring the lines between who he is and who he's playing.
And that takes guts. Not a lot of actors can do that without, getting lost in the process. But Pacino, he seems to have found a way to go to those really dark places, those depths of emotion, without letting them, totally consume him.
That's a good point. You do wonder if that whole method acting thing, if it was both his biggest strength and his biggest weakness. Towards the end of Sonny Boy, though, he starts talking about how his movies have affected people. And he sounds, really humbled by how his work has touched people across generations. What do you think Pacino's legacy will be? How will people remember him?
It's hard to imagine American movies without him. He's become this, archetype, a symbol of pure talent and dedication to his craft. And he's inspired so many other actors, directors, writers. But beyond the awards and all that, I think his real legacy is that he showed us what it means to be human. He made us feel things, think about things, confront things about ourselves that we might not want to face.
And even though he's like a total legend, there's this humility in the book, this self-awareness. He doesn't hide from his struggles, his mistakes, his flaws. It makes him feel more real, more human.
Absolutely. And that's a pretty powerful message, too. It's like even the people we admire, the ones who seem to have it all, they're still dealing with the same stuff we are.
Sonny Boy is more than just a celebrity memoir. It's about what it means to be alive, the search for purpose, the struggle to find your own voice and use it to, connect with the world.
And it's a reminder that even when things are really rough, there's always hope, there's always a chance to find your way through.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to stop for now.
It's interesting how Pacino, even after all the success he's had, he still seems to be searching, still trying to grow as an artist. He talks about how every role, every experience, it's all shaped him, pushed him to become more.
It's like he's saying that the journey never really ends. Even when you're at the top of your game, there's always something new to learn, something else to explore, something more to say.
Exactly. And I think that's something we can all relate to no matter what we do, what we're passionate about. That drive to master something, to keep pushing ourselves further, it's just part of being human.
It's definitely inspiring to see that Pacino hasn't just settled. He's not resting on his laurels. He's still taking those challenging roles, still experimenting, still pushing himself creatively. Makes you wonder what keeps him going at this point in his career. Is it that same hunger that he had as a young actor, or has it changed into something else?
I think it's probably a mix of things. I mean, there's obviously still that love for the craft, that desire to explore the human experience through acting. But I also think there's a sense of responsibility now. He
Yeah.
knows how much influence he has, and I think he wants to use that to tell stories that really matter.
It's like he's not just an actor anymore. He's become this cultural icon. And I guess that comes with a certain, I don't know, maybe a sense of duty to use your voice, your talent, to make a difference in the world.
Yeah, and that's where his thoughts on the film industry get really interesting. He doesn't pretend that it's all perfect. He talks about the tough parts, the compromises you have to make, the struggle between art and money. It's all about finding that balance, staying true to what you believe in while still working within the system. You know what I mean?
Which brings up an interesting question for all of us, I think. How do we find that balance in our own lives? You know, how do we go after what we love, what we dream of, while still dealing with the practical stuff, the day-to-day reality? What compromises are we okay with? And where do we say enough is enough?
I think that's one of the most important things we can take away from Sonny Boy. It's like even someone like Al Pacino, who's achieved, more than most people could ever imagine, he still struggles with these questions. It makes him more real, you know, more like us.
Yeah, for sure. It's a good reminder that success doesn't make you immune to the tough stuff.
Mhm.
The internal battles, the doubts, the uncertainties, we all deal with it.
Absolutely. And it also reminds us that it's so important to be true to who you are, to find your own path, even if it means going against the crowd or, not doing what people expect you to do.
Pacino talks about acting being his lifeline, his way of understanding the world. What was it about Sonny Boy that really resonated with you? What will you take away from it?
For me, it was his honesty. He's so open and vulnerable. He's not afraid to show his flaws, his imperfections. It's like, it reminds us that even the people we idolize, they're just human. They deal with the same messy, complicated stuff that we all do.
I think that's a great point to end on. Sonny Boy is more than just another celebrity telling their story. It's about being human, you
Mhm.
know? It's about searching for meaning, about finding your own voice and using it to connect with other people.
It's a reminder that even when things seem really dark, there's always hope. There's always a way to find the light again.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into Al Pacino's Sonny Boy. If you're at all interested in acting or film or just a really good story about someone's life, I definitely recommend it. It's honest, it's raw, and it's definitely inspiring. And it makes you think, what are your lifelines? What are the things you're willing to fight for, even when it gets hard? Something to think about. Thanks for joining us.